Welcome to our deep dive into the sometimes overlooked world of aluminum. You've been asking about Alcoa's stock performance lately and how things like defense and even this new recycling invention are shaping the market. We've got a ton of articles, market analysis, even some international news to get through. So let's jump in.
Yeah, aluminum really is everywhere, isn't it? But I think most of us don't even think about it unless we're trying to, I don't know, flatten out some foil or crush a can for recycling. But it's actually become this critical material for so many industries, even the military now.
Okay, so let's start with the mystery surrounding Alcoa. Their stock's down, what, like 60% since March of 22? To put that in perspective, the overall market measured by the S&P 500 actually grew 33% in that same time frame.
Yeah, so it's almost like the S&P 500 is the all-star team of the U.S. stock market. And Alcoa is stuck on the bench. Even though analysts think they have the potential to be a star player, it's like their stock is seriously undervalued.
So why is the market undervaluing Alcoa? What are we missing here? Is it
Yeah.
aluminum itself, or is something else going on with the company?
Well, there are definitely some interesting factors at play in the aluminum market specifically. Like, for example, did you know that aluminum is now considered a critical raw material by NATO?
Wait, really? I always thought that list was like oil and those rare earth minerals. What makes aluminum so important for defense?
It's all about aluminum's unique combo of strength and lightweight. I mean, those properties are essential when you're building things like military aircraft, armored vehicles, even missile components. And, given the current global landscape where tensions are running pretty high, countries are prioritizing their defense capabilities, and aluminum is a key part of that puzzle.
Okay, so that increased demand from the defense industry. That must be driving aluminum prices way up, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But 2024 actually saw a lot of volatility in aluminum prices. Overall, there was about a 10% growth, but there were some pretty big price swings throughout the year.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got these competing forces at play, increased demand from some sectors, but then what? What else is impacting the price of aluminum?
Well, on the one hand, you've got the EU getting ready to ban imports of Russian aluminum. If that happens, it'll leave a big gap in the European market.
Right, because Russia's one of the biggest aluminum producers in the world, so that ban is going to send shockwaves through the global market.
Exactly. And that kind of uncertainty makes investors nervous. Then on the other hand, you've got predictions from groups like Commerzbank, suggesting that 2025 might see a global surplus of aluminum.
Hold on, a surplus? You mean too much aluminum? How is that even possible with all this talk about critical materials and defense needs?
Well, surplus basically means we're producing more aluminum than the world needs at the moment. A lot of it is coming from increased production in places like China. A surplus tends to push prices down, which isn't great for companies like Alcoa.
So is that what's happening with Alcoa stock? Are investors worried about this potential surplus and lower aluminum prices?
That's definitely part of it. But to really understand what's going on with Alcoa, we also need to factor in this game-changing innovation that could really disrupt the entire industry.
Ooh, intrigue. I love a good plot twist. What kind of innovation are we talking about?
Get this. Someone has invented an aluminum catching filter. It can actually separate out aluminum particles from all sorts of waste.
Okay, that sounds cool, but I'm not quite getting how this is a game changer. You're going to have to break it down for me.
Imagine being able to efficiently pull aluminum out of anything,
Hmm.
from shredded car parts to construction debris. This filter makes that possible. And not only does that mean we can recycle aluminum more effectively, but it also means we could become less dependent on mining raw bauxite ore.
So this could be a win-win for both the environment and the aluminum market.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this is where things get really interesting for a company like Alcoa. On one hand, they could benefit from the EU ban on Russian aluminum. If they can fill that supply gap, it could boost their sales even if prices do dip a little.
But on the other hand, they also need to figure out how to adapt to this new wave of recycling technology. If the aluminum catching filter takes off, it could change the whole landscape of aluminum production.
Right, so now the question is, how does Alcoa position themselves to capitalize on these opportunities and navigate these potential challenges? That's what we'll look into next.
So we've got geopolitical shifts, market volatility, and a potential recycling revolution all swirling around Alcoa. Talk about a challenging business environment. Before we get back to Alcoa's strategy, I'm still curious about this aluminum catching filter. How does it actually work?
Well, it's surprisingly simple in concept. The filter uses a specialized magnetic process to attract and trap aluminum particles,
Mm.
even from complex mixtures of materials.
Wait, aluminum is magnetic. I thought only things like iron and steel were attracted to magnets.
Good catch. Aluminum itself isn't naturally magnetic, But this filter utilizes a clever trick. It creates a powerful magnetic field that induces eddy currents in the aluminum particles. These eddy currents then generate their own magnetic field, which opposes the original field, causing the aluminum to be repelled.
Okay, that's pretty technical. So it's like using magnetism to sort of push the aluminum away from everything else?
Exactly. And because this separation is based on a physical property of the aluminum itself, it allows for a very high level of purity in the recovered material. No need for complex chemical treatments or anything like that.
So we're talking about clean, high-quality aluminum that can be fed directly back into manufacturing.
Precisely. And that's a big deal when it comes to sustainability. Traditionally, recycling aluminum involved melting it down in energy-intensive smelting processes. This filter eliminates that step, making the whole recycling process much more efficient and environmentally friendly.
I see where you're going with this. If we can get more recycled aluminum into the market, that means we'll need to mine less bauxite ore, which is the primary source of aluminum.
Exactly. This could be a game changer, especially considering how much energy it takes to extract and refine bauxite. And remember, we're not just talking about soda cans here. Aluminum is increasingly being used in industries that are focused on reducing their environmental impact, like electric vehicles and solar panels.
So this aluminum catching filter could help those industries become even more sustainable by creating a closed-loop system for aluminum. We take it out of old products, clean it up with this filter, and then use it to make new products over and over again.
That's the idea. Of course, there's still some hurdles to overcome. We need to scale up the production of these filters, make sure they can be integrated into existing recycling infrastructure, and ensure the recovered aluminum meets the quality standards of various industries.
It sounds like there's a lot of potential here, but it's not a guaranteed slam dunk. How quickly do you think this technology could become mainstream?
It's hard to say for sure, but if you look at the speed of innovation in other areas of material science, I think we could see significant adoption of this technology within the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, so let's bring this back to Alcoa. How should they be thinking about this technology and its potential impact on their business?
Well, they have a couple options. One approach would be to invest heavily in this technology themselves, maybe even become a leader in developing and deploying these filters.
That would certainly give them a competitive edge in a market that's becoming increasingly focused on sustainability.
Right. But it's also a risky bet. What if the technology doesn't pan out as expected? Or what if another company beats them to the punch?
So what's the other option? Just wait and see how things play out.
That's always a possibility. But it could leave them playing catch-up. A more strategic approach might be to explore partnerships with companies that are already developing this technology.
That way they can get a foot in the door without putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly. It also allows them to learn from the expertise of others and potentially adapt the technology to their specific needs.
So we've got this potential game changer on the recycling front. But we also can't forget about the geopolitical forces shaping the aluminum market.
Right. We still need to factor in that EU ban on Russian aluminum.
Exactly.
Hmm.
If we put on our analyst hats for a moment, what do you think the combined impact of this ban and the new recycling technology will be on aluminum prices in the long term?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a complex interplay of factors.
No kidding. On one hand, the EU ban could create a supply shortage in Europe, which would likely push prices up. But on the other hand, if this aluminum catching filter really takes off, it could lead to a glut of recycled aluminum, which would push prices down.
And then we have to factor in those Commerzbank predictions about a potential surplus in 2025. It's a real tug-of-war between upward and downward pressure on prices.
So how does Alcoa navigate this uncertain terrain? It seems like they're facing a real strategic dilemma. It's like we're trying to solve a puzzle with like half the pieces missing. Alcoa needs to make some decisions about their future, but with all this uncertainty in the aluminum market, it's hard to know which way to turn.
Yeah, it's definitely tricky. But let's try to piece together what we know so far. We've got these opposing forces at play, right? Potential supply disruptions from that EU ban versus a potential surge in recycled aluminum from this new filter tech.
And then we've got those Commerzbank predictions about a possible surplus in 2025, which doesn't exactly paint a rosy picture for aluminum prices.
Right. If Commerzbank's right and we see this surplus happen, it's going to put downward pressure on prices for sure. And that could really squeeze Alcoa's profit margins and make their stock even less attractive to investors.
Okay, so let's say the surplus does happen. What can Alcoa do to sort of mitigate the impact of lower aluminum prices?
Well, one option would be to focus on becoming a low-cost producer. Streamline their operations, find ways to reduce their energy consumption, maybe even explore cheaper sources of bauxite.
So basically, they need to find a way to make aluminum more efficiently than their competitors. But is that enough to stay competitive if the market's flooded with cheap aluminum?
It might not be enough on its own. They might also need to think about diversifying their product portfolio. Instead of just selling raw aluminum, they could start producing more specialized aluminum products that command higher prices.
That's a good point. Maybe they could focus on supplying those industries that are less sensitive to price fluctuations, like aerospace or defense.
Exactly. Or they could explore opportunities in the growing market for high-purity aluminum, which is used in things like electronics and solar panels.
So it sounds like Alcoa might need to get a bit more creative and strategic if they want to weather this potential storm. But let's not forget about that aluminum catching filter. Couldn't that play a role in Alcoa's future too?
Absolutely. If Alcoa embraces this tech deck, it could give them a significant advantage in a world that's increasingly demanding sustainable practices. Imagine if they became known as the company that champions closed-loop aluminum production.
That would certainly resonate with those investors who are looking for companies that align with their values. But wouldn't shifting to a recycling-based model require like a major overhaul of their existing infrastructure?
It would definitely require some big adjustments for sure. But it could also be a chance for Alcoa to reinvent themselves as a leader in sustainable aluminum production.
And who knows, maybe that's what they need to do to really turn things around and get their stock price back on track.
It's definitely possible. But ultimately, the future of Alcoa depends on the choices they make in the coming months and years.
Well, we've explored a lot of different angles today. We talked about geopolitical tensions, market volatility, technological innovation, even a little bit of corporate strategy. It's clear that aluminum is more than just a simple metal. It's a window into the complex forces that are shaping our world.
You know what fascinates me most about aluminum is how it connects so many different aspects of our lives. From the cars we drive to the phones in our pockets, aluminum is everywhere, and its story is constantly evolving.
And that's what makes it such a fascinating deep dive. We started out trying to figure out what was happening with Alcoa's stock, and we ended up exploring all these interconnected global trends.
It really is amazing how one material can lead us down so many different paths.
Absolutely. So what's the one key takeaway you hope our listeners will walk away with from this aluminum adventure?
I hope they'll remember that even something as seemingly mundane as aluminum can help us understand the bigger picture, whether it's the energy transition or the rise of new technologies or the shifting balance of global power. Aluminum is a lens through which we can see the world changing all around us.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. Aluminum, the metal that reflects the world. Stay curious, keep exploring, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.